So, back in 1986, about 1.5 million balloons were released in downtown Cleveland. It was supposed to be a charity fundraiser and honestly, a way to put the growing city of Cleveland on the map. But, instead of being remembered as an impressive spectacle, it would go down in history as a fatal disaster. Balloonfest was Cleveland's big plan to rebrand itself. The city had a rough reputation, and leaders wanted to prove Cleveland wasn't a mistake. Outdoing Disneyland's balloon record seemed like the perfect way to do it. After months of planning, the day of Balloonfest finally arrived. As preparations were underway in Cleveland, a different story unfolded on Lake Erie. A severe storm had passed the night before. 2 men went fishing before the storm. Their boat was found abandoned, suspected overboard. The Coast Guard began a search operation. Meanwhile, Churi Dobwan Bin Khan Kinsto, Doband Albana, Curry Wan Kwan Day Bermudes, Turdim Wide, Region, Engstobad Aid Gates Gradidate Mons, Anger Ankshurder, Bodivon Ban Storn. Stove for the balloon launch. A rainstorm approached, but the balloons were ready. They released the balloons ahead of schedule. So, right on schedule, a record has just been broken in Cleveland. Over 1,500,000 more balloons than ever before. There was really no doubt about it. The launch was just spectacular. It was a tremendous moment of triumph for the city of Cleveland. But, unfortunately, this moment of triumph didn't last long. The expectation was that the helium-filled balloons would float around for a while before eventually deflating and returning to Earth, one by one. But that's not exactly what happened. The wind, just shifted a bit, and suddenly the balloons were trailing fast. At first, it was beautiful. The balloons were coming back, drifting this way. But then the cold air and oncoming rain immediately pushed the still inflated balloons, tens of thousands of them, right back down towards the ground in droves. The result was just mass chaos. Chaos, balloons, about 1.5 million of them, caused quite a stir in Cleveland yesterday. It was part of the, mortally wind that quickly carried the balloons over to Burke Lakefront Airport, and within minutes, the runways were so clogged that all flights had to be suspended. The balloons also started to descend on certain streets, and after a number of car accidents, these roads had to be closed until a bulldozer arrived to clear out the balloons. While all this was happening, the Coast Guard was still out looking for the 2 missing fishermen. Ironically, that big balloon launch in Cleveland was actually one of the things making this search so tough for the Coast Guard. Balloons had descended on Lake Erie in massive quantities. 60% of the balloons launched landed here instead of the planned 10%. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, honestly. Can you imagine trying to find somebody floating out there, or even spotting a life jacket with all those balloons on the water? On September 29th, 2 days after the balloons were launched, the Coast Guard finally called off the search for the 2 missing fishermen. And, shortly after, both men's bodies washed ashore. Balloonfest was featured in the 1988 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. However, that was the only edition to include it, and shortly after, Guinness ended the category of balloon launching altogether.